Alright guys, it's a 1979 JMP. It's a 1959 super lead circuit, right? 4-holer. As you can see, this thing has been heavily modded by one of the legends of modding. It's a Mark Cameron modded JMP, and there won't be many of these in Australia, a modded JMP by Mark himself. Right, this thing, I have not opened it up yet. The owner of it, who is a guy here in Melbourne, Australia, who has a great collection of guitars and amplifiers, handed it over to me a few weeks back and described it as kind of not sounding like it used to sound, and has kind of a problem where the sound cuts in and out, a bit of a crackle if you like. We will check it out. It has got a range of push-pull knobs on the front here. It's a clean volume and a preamp drive here. So I'm already looking at this thing and thinking, okay, it's been modded with a clean channel, as well as obviously a gain mod. And what we've got here is a range of functions. There's a pull push boost, there's a pull shift here on the EQ, and this is a plexi mode, which I'm assuming brings a gain stage in and out. I'll turn it over and have a look at the back of this thing. Yeah, and you can see here, right, it's obviously been modded pretty heavily. Let's have a look at it. Okay, this is a clean high cut, right, so some sort of low pass filter here. Looks like a foot switch kind of jack that's been put in. I'm assuming for at least the channel selection. It might be some boost features as well. Who knows? I don't know what this is. There's obviously some sort of gain. It's a three-way gain switch here. We've got a compression pot, send and return on an effects loop with a bypass and the effects loop on. This is a three-way, and it says low, mid, high, mid, bass, and some sort of EQ setting. I'm assuming this might be a depth, right? Maybe it's a depth cap. And a bass boost on a pot, right? So that might be a depth pot. We'll see. Speaker jacks here, obviously output. It's got a half power switch, 150, which I'm assuming is just lifting cathodes on two of the tubes. And it's wired as a US amp. Well. Take a look at these mains filter caps. Not stock. Definitely added by Mark. Saw this on a few Jose's. I think the one of the videos that's on Aussie, I believe his name is. His Jose modded JMP. I think it was a JMP. Similar edition. These are the mains filters. These are 650 microfarad a piece. 650 microfarad at 330 volts. And there, so they're working in series, right? So 325 microfarad mains filtering. Pretty insane. 2 preamp tubes added here. Okay, so obviously an additional one drilled in here and another one over here, and they have been labelled. So Mark, or maybe someone, has gone to the effort of adding this, and this says first preamp clean and OD, second and third preamp OD, cathode follower tone stack, loop preamp. Okay, so it's a tube buffered effects loop, phase inverter, and this says EL34s here. Transformers are original. The rest of these filter caps are original as well. Let's flip it over and see what wonders await us. Oh, look at this thing in all its glory. Right, I thought I'd start with a wide shot like this, and then I will zoom in on different sections of the amp and see if we can, I don't know, make some sort of sense of what's going on in here. I have kind of had a look at this for a couple of minutes, and yeah, my mind boggles. I will say it's a lot of work. Like Mark doing this work back when he did it. I don't know how old this, I don't know when he did this. Someone in the comments might be able to, let me know or let us know what era this might have been from Cameron. But I will say it's a hell of a lot of work. Yeah, I mean, at this point, I'd just be stripping it and building a new amp from scratch. I'd just gut this whole thing. I'm not saying I'd gut this, but if I was handed a JMP like this and I wanted to turn it into a 2-channel amp, you know what I would do, guys? I'd have a circuit board designed for it, and I'd take this ST1 board out and just do the whole thing. But I guess Mark didn't have those tools at his disposal. So, look, it's pretty, yeah, I'm a bit speechless, to be honest. So let's highlight a couple of things in the amp. Just, I haven't measured any of this stuff yet, but I'm just kind of going off some initial observations. First of all, a nice little flap here. Love this. I wonder if this was added subsequently. So this is all the different taps for the primary transformer, the primary side of the power transformer, I should say. And so we've got a range of different taps here which are connected through, and also powering this secondary power transformer here. This will be set up for a 12-volt supply, which has been rectified here. See some rectifier diodes here, smoothing caps, and a regulator. Okay, and a little LED light here, and I wonder this will be coming off the rectified DC, just as a nice comfort light on the inside of the amp. When we power it up, we'll see what happens. And you can see the DC line. It's these red and green wires which are coming and running down the board here, down to the preamp end. That's kind of the main stuff that's going on in the power stage. Let's move down. Right, so we're in let's call it the mid section of the amp here. Just so much stuff going on. Presence pot right at the end here. A couple of caps here in parallel. This one's been gooped, so you cannot see what it is. This one partially obscured. This is a base pot here. It's got a push-pull, which is pull boost. I see the ground on the mid is lifted by this resistor here. This is also a push-pull, which is the pull shift function, and I can see off the mid pot here we've got a couple of caps. This is a triple pot, of course, right next to the mid. And what this is telling me is that for the treble wiper, we're over here to the master volume. So this is not a pre-tone stack master Jose mod. Okay, I'm not sure what the mod is, but what I do know now is that it's traditional kind of 2203 style master volume, post tone stack. Okay, so before we get into the actual preamp of this beast, this is the depth network. Now I can see this purple wires coming off the impedance selector. This is our negative feedback line, and it's coming into this pot here. Now this is the bass boost pot on the rear, and I kind of guessed that was probably a depth pot. Sure enough, it is. This 3-way mini toggle here is selecting between these different cap values. Switching between 3 cap values just means we're changing the kind of the center frequency that the depth is set at, and then the depth pot is adjusting how much of that depth is coming through in the negative feedback line. And here we are, guys, down the preamp end of the board, and right here is the very first preamp tube that's been drilled in. It's a parallel stage, right? So coming off this black coax here is off the input jack, and it runs these 2 grid resistors that come off into into each grid of the two triodes on this stage, and this collection here, caps and resistors and so on, will be setting up the plate and cathode values for this guy. This little kind of thing on the side here, you can see it's got its own rectifier and smoothing caps. It's setting up a heater supply for this extra tube, so DC heaters. Now, what's got me very kind of curious is why would you have that when at the other end of the amp, as we just saw, there's an additional power transformer set up to give a DC supply, and the size of that power transformer, it's a decent size, right? It could definitely supply DC heaters, certainly for the preamp, for the important preamp tubes that are in this amp. Which makes me wonder whether this mod was actually done across two different phases. Maybe it wasn't all done in one go, and this was done kind of early on, and then subsequently the big power transformer down the other end was added. Nonetheless, you can see closely on here that these values, all this stuff was gooped heavily, and it's been stripped. Okay, I just wanted to zoom in here, guys, right in the middle of the board, and you can see in this area here, this thing was heavily gooped. If you look carefully here on the actual PCB, there's remnants of kind of all this black gunk. Alright, it's all kind of, you can't see that there, but it's all was on the board, and someone has scraped it off. And these components here, these caps, these resistors down here, were absolutely covered in the shit, and someone has, as I said, gone through and tried to clean, well, they have actually cleaned it off mostly. It's obviously still a lot of it there, but enough that you can see what the values are, or you could even take some measurements. Okay, the one other thing is the Metro loop. Now, when we had a look at the top of the chassis, you remember one of the 12AX7s was notated as the effects loop. Well, if that's the case, why would you have that? Okay guys, I've got the Cameron modded JMP just into my 2x12 down here, and I'll just take you through some of the features that the amp's got. To be honest, it's sounding pretty good. I shouldn't be surprised, should I? Well, I'm not. It's pretty killer. First of all, yeah, that's the channel switch there, and it's got, fucking a hell of a pop. So that's not ideal, but let's have a listen. So this is obviously the clean channel, right? So this is the first triode on here, and serviceable clean, simple clean. This cut here, quite dramatic, I think. It's really kind of taken out right into the kind of upper mid-range actually, but yeah, pretty useful. This switch here is a channel switch, I think. Not when it's like that, but I think when it's in the gain mode, I was managing to switch the channels with this as well. After we go through this playtest, I'll bring the camera back over and I'll give you a little bit of a view of kind of how I think this circuit's put together. Certainly not all the ins and outs, but I've got a kind of rough idea now of what's going on with this thing. There are two gain pots here, right? I'm just kind of dialing them into about 3 PM. There's tons of gain in this amp, not surprised. Pretty killer. Quite nice under the fingers actually. It's like, it's really aggressive, but a bit spongy at the same time. It's pretty cool. I've really only found one issue with the amp. I think it sounds pretty cool, straight up, right? And I haven't found what I was expecting, which was some issues with it, crackling and so on. I've been through it with the chopstick, and I can't get any pops or crackles to come out. Tapping the thing, everything seems pretty fine. The only issue I have found is the power switch is very finicky. So if you kind of tap it and move it around, the power will cut in and out on the amp, which is not ideal. Other than that, I think we could be good to go. Alright, so just a very, very high level view. This is our input jack here. Obviously, we're coming straight into one side of, or both sides of this first 12AX7. One side's for the clean channel, one side heads off into the gain. And so we've got these two kind of corresponding networks here. You can see, you know, resistors and caps and so on. So it's a plate and cathode setup for one of the triodes and a plate and cathode setup for the other. And if you trace these kind of there's two black coax leads that come out of here, and one of them is heading into the clean pot, yeah, and then from the wiper of the clean, this guy heads over here into probably these mixer resistors here, and by the look of it, and the other coax, which is the gain one, which we're probably much more interested in, it comes across here and heads into this first gain pot, which is actually bridged across here. It's not a setup as a voltage divider, it's a setup as a basically a variable resistor. Alright, so and there's all kinds of stuff going on in here in terms of it's not grounded, it's pulled up from ground by this resistor here. So however, you've got off the wiper, well, let's just call it the top of the pot anyway, we are off into this black coax that runs down, and it goes into the first triode of the pot that's down here. Sorry, of the tube that's down here. First triode of the tube that's down here. Now that comes back out and is coupled through one of the coupling caps here, and comes out. It's this one here actually, right? And then there's a resistor and treble peaker network here. It looks like a 220k with a 0.0022, and that heads into the second gain, which has got a 470k to ground, and then off this wiper of this gain pot, this another black coax lead, it runs along the perimeter of the ST1 board here, comes in and comes into the other triode. Okay, so far 1, 2, 3 stages, right? Now from here, we come out of this plate, and it comes in back onto the board here, and we're through this coupling cap, and it's got a resistor and a couple of capacitors here to ground, shaving off some top end. And then that goes into this pink wire here, which comes back into this kind of network of stuff that had all the goop all over it. We've got this kind of the stage here, which is called the comp on the rear, or compression, I should say. And it looks like some MP-SA06s in here, like you would use MP-SO6 transistors set up as Zener diodes. So it could be set up as a kind of variable clipping stage here. Then underneath the loop here, only one triode. So this is where you'd normally see a gain stage in the cathode follower. The cathode follower driving the tone stack. The cathode follower triode is not used. It's not connected. So in the same way that this, what is V3, only one triode is used, or V4, only one triode is used. And as I kind of said earlier, I think what probably happened here is that this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stage plate fed design, because it is a plate fed tone stack, there's no cathode follower in this amp, but this 5-stage design would have kind of been complete here, and then this tube that's under the effects loop board was used for the effects loop. But with the introduction of this Metro loop, it's kind of been rewired, perhaps, so that one triode is used here and one triode is used here. Nonetheless, from the single triode here, we've got a plate-fed kind of tone stack. It comes back onto the board here, and then we've got, this is the treble cap is on the board here, but the mid and the bass caps have been removed off the board, and these yellow wires run out, and it looks like they're here instead. All right, so we've got part of the tone stack mounted on the pots, but part of it's still kind of residing on here. And as I said earlier, from the treble wiper here, we're into the master volume. Okay, and you can see the master volume does have a resistor from the input to the wiper here. I haven't measured that yet, but it looks like 460k, something like that, 430k. And then from the wiper of the master volume, we are into here. Now this is also feeding the effects loop, right? So the master volume is pre-effects loop, okay? And so this red wire here is heading off into this switch here on the bottom, which is taking the effects loop in and out. And we come back out of the effects loop and back into the board here, this black wire here underneath. And so I think, I haven't tested this, but I think the effects loop is only wired into the gain channel. So the effects loop out comes back into this board here, and this is where we're switching. As I said, we're switching between the clean channel and the master volume of the gain channel, and then it's straight into this green wire here, is straight into the phase inverter. And the rest of the amp looks pretty standard kind of Marshall. I don't think there's too much there that's been kind of changed and modded. So yeah, my first Cameron, have a look at. I'm pretty impressed with the amount of detail that's in here. The workmanship is pretty amazing. The amp is quiet, even though it's got a truckload of gain. It's not too noisy. It's got gain hiss, but you'd expect that. It's the grounding sorted in it. There's no hum. The only thing I wasn't surprised by, but I am disappointed in, is that all this black crap that's been spewed all over the amp. And I understand people trying to protect, their great ideas, but it makes a hell of a job for anyone who is tasked with trying to maintain this thing in future years. So I'm not a fan of doing that.